So I asked all of you in advance to send me 1 or 2 sentences about what for you an affirmative culture, recognition culture means. And Grace, I would like to start with you. You're director of the National Recognition of Prior Learning in Higher Education project. It's co-sponsored by the Irish government, the Technological Higher Education Association and the Irish Universities Association. And you sent me the message: for me, affirmative recognition culture means that institutions not only offer or do recognition, but actively scan for opportunities to harness it to progress strategic goals. That's interesting. So you don't only do your job, but you actively scan for more. What exactly do you mean by that?
So I hope you all can hear me. My mic is working.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, and what we're trying to achieve in the project that we're running at the moment in Ireland, is that, you know, we know that there is RPL, or recognition of prior learning. It happens in all of our institutions. It's happening to greater or lesser degrees. What we are trying to build, and it's that cultural element, I think, that's very interesting about this event, is a culture where we're actively scanning the horizon for the opportunities to use RPL. So, for example, I have a colleague here, Christine McCabe, who's from Atlantic Technological University, and part of her job is doing exactly that. And they've put together a wonderful partnership with a local employer, for example, where they're using the work-based learning that those employees have, and they're giving that value and then helping those employees to access programs in the Atlantic Technological University. So I think it's a great example where it's not just something, a passive thing in the system, but our staff are actively out there looking for the opportunities.
So it's not so much of a nuisance, but it's an opportunity, something that you really cherish, something that you want to strengthen. Do most professors agree with that?
I think it would depend on where you go and who you talk to. So I think at the moment, no, we couldn't say that every academic member of staff would. And I guess that's one of the challenges, is about like what motivates people to do this. And at the moment, I would say it obviously depends on the strategy of the institution, but it also depends on, you know, are you filling your programs, for example? Do you need to do something else to get people into the program? So I think at the moment our system leaves it up to the individuals maybe to make those decisions. I don't think maybe that we have enough systems drivers to incentivize that kind of behaviour.
What is the situation in Ireland right now? Do many universities need more students, or are they pretty much full? So how big is the incentive to look for new ways of student careers?
A good question, and many of them will say, look, we've got plenty, and that's something that's happened in Ireland. We've had a massive expansion really in student numbers. And so, you know, it begins to be, as I say, it comes down to the individual level about particular courses or maybe particular areas where, you know, institutions are trying to attract students. But what we do know is, you know, in the big picture, you know, all of this change is happening. Some of it was referred to already, changes in, you know, the digitalization, the climate crisis. All of these things mean that people are going to need to engage more frequently with higher education. So, you know, that's, there's no kind of uncertainty about that. We know that. And therefore, we need to be looking at how do we build up our systems to be able to be responsive to all of these changes.
Yeah, I was asking that because in the German context, universities for a long time were very full, and this is maybe changing now. And so this is an opportunity for universities to reconsider and to think about new ways to attract students and to be more open, which might be a new opportunity for the recognition culture. Thank you so much, Grace. And I would like to move on to Chiara Finocchietti. You're Deputy Director at CIMEA, the Information Center on Academic Mobility and Equivalence in Italy, which has been around since 1984 already, for a long time, to provide information and advice on the procedures of qualifications recognition. And you're talking about transparent information that is key to empower individuals to exercise their right. Do you see there's still a problem there with transparent information? Don't many students or applicants know what their rights are?
Well, we can ask this question to the group here. In our experience, when we meet general public students, there is still a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability on recognition of qualification. So, and this generates sometimes frustration, and so we think there is still a lot of work to do in providing transparent information, in the sense that because transparent information is there, maybe we need more communication, effective communication, so to reach our target audience. And also, I see a lot of effort in providing this information to empower the right of students and citizens to navigate this complex recognition landscape, because it's a very technical word, so we understand that it's not easy to
Whose
navigate.
obligation is this to provide the transparent information?
So that's a good question. I will answer saying that it's a shared responsibility, in the sense that universities are at the forefront, because they are, in the majority of European countries, this is the case also in Italy, they are responsible for academic recognition, but this is a shared responsibility. And I think this conference is a very nice way of, is a very nice expression of how the circle of recognition should work in a virtuous way, putting together national authority, the ministries, higher education institutions, universities, economic centers, staff, students, academic and administrative staff, so all the stakeholders that are in different way involved in recognition.
Mm-hmm. Do the responsible people at the universities actually know what they want to tell? Because sometimes, at least from the German context, you can get the impression that they don't know themselves what the legal situation is.
So that's, I will refer to what has been said in the address, in the welcome address, that a culture of recognition is in between the legal, it's in the interplay between the legal aspect and the cultural aspect. And I think our work is exactly here, because we have legislation, but to effectively implement the legislation and enforce the legislation, we need people, competent people, people that know their job, and for this we need training, we need exchange of information, exchange of practices, so we need, in a sense, community of practices. And I will say that a lot has been done to train staff, but maybe we should move a step further to, let's say, be student-centered also in recognition, to be always from the side of the applicant looking to the information.
So that they can go up to their professors and say, well, I know the legal situation, maybe I'll teach you about the legal situation there. Thank you so much for now. Anna, you are the executive committee member of the European Students' Union with more than 6 years of experience in the higher education quality assurance field. You're a PhD student in the economics program at Ivan Yakovlevishvili, Tbilisi State University.
Yes.
And you have been member of the National Center for Educational Quality Enhancement of Georgia's Student Expert Pool since 2017. You're really into quality assurance. Do most students know about their rights?
First of all, thank you for including a student perspective in this panel, because I think that's, and we think European Students' Union and students needs to be put in the center of the recognition procedures, and this is what I've meant. The procedures needs to be less bureaucratic and user-friendly, because we know from the implementation report of Lisbon Recognition Convention that there are still challenges in terms of implementing all the recommendation among the countries, as well as some procedures are bureaucratic, less user-friendly, and not free from cost. So we truly believe that the recognition of the study or prior learning is a fundamental right of students, and this needs to be more friendly for students, and students need to be put in the center of these all procedures. European Students' Union has a resolution on promoting automatic recognition, and this resolution is publicly available on our webpage, because we see that there are still challenges, not only in the recognition, but especially for the automatic recognition, because we see that sometimes the learning outcomes are not taken into consideration during the recognition procedures, and students face a very bureaucratic procedures, and these are very long and so on, and sometimes students are not aware about their rights, how to do all these bureaucratic procedures. procedures. So even the Lisbon Recognition Convention recommendation needs to be fully implemented in some countries. We also think that there the need to have a better link between the quality assurance and the recognition, as well as the new trends and new opportunities needs to be implemented in the recognition procedures, which is one of the topic is digitalization, and we think that there is still room for improvement to all these new trends to be implemented in the recognition procedures.
When you sent me your short message about the digitalization, I was a little bit surprised because I thought, well, we are at the end of the year 2023, we should be beyond that. We are not?
Actually, as I've mentioned, and as we know from some reports, that there is still room for improvement in this area because some procedures are not fully digitalized, and that there are still some bureaucratic topics.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for now. I would like to move on to Norway, to Dag Hovdhaugen. You are Executive Director of the Division for Recognition and Admissions in the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills, which has been established under the Norwegian Ministry of Education Research in 2021. So fairly new institution. Why is this establishment of this new institution? To point out the importance?
Oh, well, not directly. But it is true. Before we were coupled with NOKUT, which is the ENCA organization and has to do with accreditation. And so that is a self-standing organization. Mm-hmm. It's not directly under political direction. Mm-hmm. So by moving this, we have gotten a lot closer to the higher education institutions, mm-hmm. which has been a good move for us. I mean, our main focus is recognition of qualifications for the professional market, mm-hmm. because the institutions, they mainly do for the education sector. So, of course, being in a closer cooperation with them has been beneficial for mm-hmm. us.
In your short message, you also write about trust and transparency. So this seems to be a topic for our discussion today when we talk about culture. And you also talk about institutions to understand that there is an opportunity and a strategic tool, which is very close to what Grace said, right?
I think that getting the instruments and the legislation in place is not really difficult. I mean, most countries here, we are members of the Lisbon Recognition Convention and so on. We have been working on this for many years. And I kind of like the affirmative recognition culture concept, in a sense that as a culture, you need other things than just the instruments. Mm-hmm. You need to have the values and the kind of actions connected to it. It's what happened down in the institutions on the individual level that actually matters, at the different professors, at the different institute, what they do in their daily life. So the devil is in the details. Mm-hmm. And I think that that is a much harder concept to tackle, in a sense that we can see that there are varieties within Norwegian education system. Even though most institutions are public, we have a coordinated intake to higher education on the first level, but still we see that there are differences, and you have the gap between the traditional academic freedom and the legislation and the rules, so you have to bridge this. And I thought it was interesting what you talked about, the German universities maybe not being full anymore. We see the same thing coming in Norway, that the yearly, there will be less students per year coming into the higher education system as the number of children go down. And so we have quite an extensive system where the institutions are allowed to compete with each other, which means that you have some institutions that are popular where you need very good grades to get in. But a lot of the institutions, they are half full in many programs. And for them, this should be an opportunity, and especially the prior learning.
Mm-hmm. So it should be an opportunity. Do they see that opportunity yet? Or are there many people who still have their doubts and maybe think this might be a quality problem there?
To a different degree. Some do, some don't. And I think that I agree with the fact that a lot do not know exactly what kind of leverage they have and what they actually can do. And so some also need tools. And one of the things that we are working on with the government is that to to try out different kind of, what should I say, practices for how you can include this. We actually have, that Chiara knows very well, the interview-based recognition made for people who don't have papers. We are going to try out some of the methods at institutions where you can use interview-based evaluations to see if you can have the recognition of prior learning.
Thank you so much for now. Aloys Krieg, you are the long-term vice president, vice rector, and I really mean long-term. I think you have been in office since 2008 for teaching at the RWTH Aachen University, one of the most prestigious technical universities in Germany. And you're talking about a shift from regulation and prevention towards facilitation and utilization. So is that shift already happened? Is it happening? Has it happened? Is it happening, or does it have to happen? How much prevention is there still in the system?
So we are on the way to this. So as a big international university, we have to deal with recognition, and we have to provide a good culture. The legal requirements, they are more or less okay. But you have to look who is making the decision. It's not the rectorate, it's not the faculty. To a certain extent, a single professor has made a decision about recognition. And that's to a certain extent our problem. So we used to have a culture.
Why is it a problem when a single professor makes a decision?
It is very different, since you do not have the same level of decision at every point. So there used to be a culture like, so we are the best university in the world for studying engineering. And if there's a student who goes abroad to have a module, then he does this because it's much easier there. And this is a damage to our reputation. I've heard that often that I start believing it myself. And we have to break up this position, and we have to make clear that is a success for our university. And the faculties need to do this. They have to put on aims themselves and a competition among the faculties. Since we can say, a faculty says 45% of our students have an international experience during their study courses, and another faculty says it's 60% or 20%. That's a good deal. Nobody wants to be the last in this competition. And that's the reason why they start efforts of having more reputation, more recognition of modules from abroad.
Since when do you see this shift? When did it start?
So it started formally with the Lisbon Convention,
well, yeah.
But now it has become more prominent, since the number of German students is going down. And we keep up the number of students at our university, since the number of international students is going up. At the moment in Aachen, it's about 1/3. And this is a more international culture. This was already true for research all the time. But in teaching, it has become maybe during the last 10 years.
So obviously, we heard that a number of times now, universities do more for recognition and improve their recognition procedures, not to help the students, but to help themselves, right? You can get the idea that it's more about, well, if they need it, they do it, Aloys.
To a certain extent, yes, but we have to see that also this improves our education. If you talk to employers, they require an international experience of our students. And it is a position of our university that we want to do this, that we want that our graduates have good chances on the job market. And that's the reason why we now have a closer look at the internationalization.
Chiara, can you relate to that, what I just said?
Yeah, I can relate, and actually I found very interesting, and I was thinking exactly that to numbers, no? Because maybe according to the latest UNESCO numbers, the number of students enrolled in higher education worldwide doubled in the last 20 years, and I think we are now 235 million of students enrolled in higher education, but the number of international mobile students tripled. So in the last 20 years. So they are now around 6 million. So if we are forced to do this because aging of our societies and the number of students growing, that's for sure true. We should say this. And also I think this is very much important and we relate to what Grace and Doug said, also regarding lifelong learning, because people is getting old, so we need to keep people educated. This is not only in Europe, also in countries where the people is still, the demographic curve is still young. So I would say yes, but I also would like to say that to the point of quality, in the sense that for a number of years, and the point on internationalization was to attract students, numbers. Come to our higher education institution. Now I see that there is more attention to quality students, genuine students and also top students. And in this sense, I think that a good recognition process, a quality recognition process can serve also to have quality education. And also I will say that what I see is that internationalization strategies are creating dialogue more and more with recognition, in a sense to work in the same direction, in a sense.
Sometimes the interests of individual academic teachers, professors differ from the institutional interests, like when it comes, for example, to taking international students. So Aloys said that in the German context, each and every professor decides what gets recognized and what not. Is that the same in your country, Doug? Because you already talked about that there might be a conflict between the freedom of the academic freedom and the institutional interest there.
I would just first like to say that I think that if the institution gets to see it more and more in their interest to attract students that way, I think that's only positive. There is no stronger driver than that. But then, of course, we also have to look at it as a student perspective. In Norway, like I said, that on the first level up to the bachelor program, for example, then we have a standardized coordinate intake where there isn't any involvement from the academic staff.
So it really takes them out there.
Yes.
They don't have anything
Yes.
to say there.
There is a system. It's systematic and it's supposed to be fair and transparent and everything. So.
And why don't they complain about their academic freedom there?
Well, it's different. There is a difference between access and admission. Right, so you have the access, and of course there are courses that require extra subjects that you might have and so on, so that's kind of the academic freedom part. But when you get higher up in the system, in master and PhD level, you have more and more influence from the kind of the academic staff, especially on the PhD level. And I think that's a long tradition in university, and I can't say for certain at the singular faculty or whatever, where how much it is or isn't. But I think we have the same problem. One of the things we are discussing is also to create a coordinated intake to the master level. That will sort of also take it a bit away from the individual kind of academic decision. And I think probably that will be coming in the next 5 years, and it's going to be exciting. Of course, when you get to the PhD level, that you actually have somebody that can be your counselor for the PhD and so on, also matters. So you can't take the academic staff completely out of the picture.
How is that in Ireland, Grace?
With
How is that
regard
in
to
Ireland? Who decides?
who decides who gets in?
Not so much who gets in, but what gets recognized.
Well, it comes down to, I guess, the policies of the institution within the overall quality and quality assurance framework. So it's complicated because for some cohorts of students, it is very simple and very transparent and easy to know. And if you're 18 and you've done your abitur, your leaving cert, it's very clear, and it's an admissions procedure in the main. It's administrative staff. If you're coming through other routes, then there would be more of an influence from the academic staff. And then if it's something like RPL, it's mostly coming down to the academic staff, for example. So it's a mixed picture, I'd say.
So what would be the position of the ESU there at this point? Do we need some kind of an institutional strategy for everywhere at all universities to make it more transparent, that that's not only a legal framework, but that all the institutions, all the universities are just required to do it in a certain way and not depending on each and every professor? Is there a position like that in the USU?
For us, it's very important to be this procedure transparent for the students, because what was proven that students are not aware of these procedures, and sometimes institutions need more transparency or to work with students more closely to tell them what are the procedures and how can they do the recognition of their study and abroad and so on. And what is more challenging is the recognition of prior learning, and this is a key challenge under the Bologna process, I think, because not all the countries have the recognition of prior learning. Even in Georgia, we don't have these procedures for the higher education. We are implementing in the VET level, but not in higher, to recognize the non-formal education or the prior learning. So this is one of the key challenges, and transparency and more closer and close cooperations to students is very important. Also, I will agree to my colleagues regarding the legislation base, that there is still challenge to adapt the legislation to the Lisbon Recognition Convention and to implement fully the recognition procedures. Also, Professor Krieg mentioned the mobility between the job markets, and this is also what we promote under the automatic recognition, that the recognition procedures needs to support not only the academic mobility, but also the mobility between the job markets and as well the research mobility.
So is it fair to say that we are a step further ahead when it comes to academic recognition, and we are still facing the biggest challenges in the field of RPL?
I think we're a bit ahead, but we still need some work to have full automatic recognition. What means automatic recognition is that that students can freely move around the EHEA countries and have the study recognized. What we faced during the war in Ukraine, this was a proof of this, that Ukrainian students faced some barriers when they wanted to recognize their studies. Even we are talking about EHEA countries where all of them are trying to implement Lisbon Recognition Convention and recommendations. The Ukrainian students still had the barriers and challenges to recognize their studies. Mm-hmm. So yes, maybe we are a bit ahead regarding the academic mobility and the academic recognition than the recognition of prior learning, but even in that topic we need some changes and improvements.
Grace, would you like to add?
On the recognition of prior learning?
Yeah, you would just, I wasn't sure if you want to add.
Yeah, I find in my Irish context, I would agree with what you say, that academic recognition is a further bit ahead, and it feels like, especially when you're giving value to learning that's happened outside of any formal education space, that's the big leap, you know, the big kind of, the jump that we need to collectively make, yeah.
Aloys, when we're talking about automatic recognition, what can we learn there in Germany from the international perspectives? I haven't really heard so much about automatic recognition in the German context yet.
We have to work on this. So in my opinion, let's start, for instance, with our European network. And when it comes to accreditation of our study courses, I tell them, okay, have a look at our European partners. Compare the curricula of European partners and tell the students and put it onto the web. If you go there and take this course, you can recognize it for this or another module. And we have to make it transparent that the student has a choice and can be sure that things are recognized when he takes these courses. This will not work for all over the world. But at least if we start with our partners, then we have a first step in the direction which is necessary.
Which again, I really don't understand, because the legal framework is the same for your partners as for any other university.
Yes, but you have to compare the competencies and the modules. may have the same name, but the content and the competencies may be different, and that's a problem.
But from what I understood, the legal framework says that universities have to prove that they are not as valid as, and not the other way around.
Yes, but professors can prove anything if they want.
So we are again right there in the middle of culture. Chiara, would you like to add to that?
Yes, this is a very interesting conversation. So I can, I will refer especially to automatic recognition and RPL. So I agree, first of all, that we are maybe a step further on academic recognition. And the proof is that we have now 20 years of Bologna process behind us, and we see the results. We should see the glass half full this time, because we did a lot of work, and all this focus on shifting from the input, so from the professor content to the output, so the learning, the knowledge and the skill of the learner worked. So, and this is actually the reason why now we can speak about automatic recognition. And I also would like to say that this vision came from universities, because the idea to have a system of comparable cycles, bachelor, master, and then the research and the PhD came with the Berlin, actually, ministerial conference, came from the university. It is written in the Magna Carta Universitatum that in 1988, 388 head of rectors and head of universities signed it, exactly to build the Europe of knowledge. So again, we are back to values. So this is for academic.
What year was that?
1988, so 10 years
so
before Bologna.
It took a long time again.
And 10 years, I mean, more than 10 years before Bologna, and more than 10 years before, well, less than 10 years before Lisbon Recognition Convention. So this is regarding academic recognition. So after 20 years, we can even speak about automatic recognition. For instance, in Italy, we just released a database with more than 400 qualifications, providing comparability to Italian qualification, so that the students can come, learners, employers can see.
Non-academic qualification.
Academic qualification.
Okay.
Academic.
Not talking
Bologna.
about non-academic yet. Automatic.
No. Now I'm speaking academic.
That takes another 30 years then. Yeah.
Exactly. But now what I wanted to say, and now I refer to RPL, is that after these 20 years, my perception is that we raised the level of ambition. Okay, now we are speaking about learning outcomes. So maybe we can start to talk to all the rest of the learning, micro-credential, RPL, flexible learning pathway. So in a sense, this will be the natural follow-up step. And I would like to add that it will be very interesting to see also how the global convention will push for this, because actually there is the definition of recognition in the global convention, a large recognition, including RPL. So it will be interesting to see what will happen. But there are several experiences. I would like to refer also to a project that the Swedish colleagues manage that says that people should not study again what they already know. That I think we all can agree, but this is the theory. To put it full in practice, we need maybe, I don't know if 30 years, I hope less, but there is still some work in front of us on this.
Doug, would you like to add, or should we move on to another challenge?
I would like to add something shortly,
sure.
if I may. That when we talked about a culture, I mean, like you said, you could prove anything if you don't want to recognize. You can prove it. It's no problem. But
Norwegian professors are able to do that as well?
to a certain, but if you want to have an affirmative recognition culture, you should seek to recognize, not to not recognize. So that's kind of the attitude and the culture part. And what the conventions say is that things, they don't have to be the same. They have to be on the same level, have to be the same scope. Are there substantial differences? That's what they're talking about, because nothing is ever the same. So at the end, you end up with comparing, and there is a leap of faith at the end, where you have to say, will this person succeed in higher education, for example, if you come to this. And this is hard, but it has to be some kind of trust in the system, because to imagine that you could have kind of an all a database where all courses are compared and evaluated. They changed all over time. We have thousands and thousands of institutions. That will never happen. That can only happen between a small cohort of elite institutions. If you want this on a global scale, like the global convention say, you have to do it in a more systemic way, and you have to try to recognize.
You said a sentence that I think is really much at core of our debate. You said it's about seeking to recognize instead of seeking not to recognize. And I think this is what the cultural aspect is about.
Right.
And since we have been talking about challenges for the last 30 minutes, mostly about challenges, maybe let's talk about examples where that already works. And Grace, you gave a very concrete example, and I would like to ask the rest of my panel to give me some more examples of, ways of recognizing that you like, that you cherish, things that actually work out fine. And I would like to start with you, Anna, because oftentimes, naturally, students have to say what doesn't work to make things better. But maybe you can give us a good example of a university, either in Georgia or elsewhere, where things work out in a nice way.
I think I don't have quite a concrete examples, but it will be some kind of continuation of what was said before. That I think the good example is to somehow match the learning outcomes and take into consideration the learning outcomes and find the transparent procedures. This is the most important. Then when you have a concrete procedures inside the higher education. In Georgia, the recognition procedures are under internal QA, so universities have the autonomy to have the fair recognition procedures. So when you have these transparent procedures and the professors or academic staff know how to do this, and also students are aware about that and they know how their studies are recognized, I think this is a good example how this should be done within the universities. First, that the university needs to have a right and autonomy to have its own procedures, but also the transparency needs to be taken into consideration, and of course the students need to be put in the center. When we talk about user friendliness, we mean that students need to be in the center.
And where is that happening already?
For us, it's happening, yes, in Georgia, that each university should have its own transparent procedures. But of course, as in other countries, we still need to put students better in this center. And of course, it's very important to ask students' opinion, even when we are designing these procedures, and when even universities are writing some procedures, how to recognize this or that study. We always need to think about students and ask their opinion, how they see that and how they want this to be done. So this is very important to ask students' opinion about that.
Doug, a concrete example, either in Norway or elsewhere?
Yeah, I mentioned that we have a coordinated intake to first level,
yes.
And that's a de facto automatic recognition, in a sense that you can perceive if you have a high school diploma from Ireland or Italy, you can very easily see if you can enter into higher education in Norway. So I think that works fairly well, and I think it's a good system because it's transparent and it's fair.
One follow-up question for a minute. In what cases will it not be recognized then? For example, you said an Italian high school diploma. I think there shouldn't be a problem at all there, for example.
Well, that might sound easy. It's not always that easy, because some countries have 11 years of schooling, some have 13 years of schooling. When you are finished in Norway, you are 19. Some places you are finished high school when you're 17, and you might not have the depth in math or whatever that you might. Language might be another problem, of course. But so for these things, that is relevant.
And if you, for example, you are at a Irish university and you have taken a course there, and then you move over to Norwegian university, undergrad level, bachelor's level, you will get your automatic recognition?
No, that then you are in the system. So it might not be automatic, but for example, among the Nordic countries, where there is a high level of trust, very similar systems, it's a de facto automatic recognition in most cases.
But from the two examples you just talked about, I don't see that much automatism yet. Not yet. I mean, we talked about the high school students coming in. It's different from country to country. We talked about the Irish example. Well, it depends. So where's the automatic part?
Well, as I said, I didn't say automatic. I said de facto automatic. Because we but the thing is that it's not individualized. That it follows a procedure. It's digitalized. That it's foreseeable when you enter into it what kind of answer you will get, and that's very close to the automatic recognition. It doesn't mean that everything is recognized, not whatsoever, because there might be substantial differences.
And another good example from the master's level, maybe, or anything else, universities that do it in a way you would like to see it anywhere else?
I think that universities benefit from having people who have worked in our offices in their system, in a sense that it has to do with culture. And I don't have a very concrete example, because it's more of an attitude, in a sense that how you deal with this, like you were talking about, that we have some universities or some institutions that are basically good at this, and some that are not.
Chiara, good example?
Yes, good example. I have two, and actually they are Italian, but they are European, if I may refer to this. So the first good example is referred to people that has the qualification but doesn't have learning outcomes. So people that come with fraudulent qualification, diploma mill. So I think a lot have been done, and there are a lot of networks and cooperation among European countries to fight against this phenomenon. Recently there was out a Council of Europe recommendation on countering education fraud that is an important piece of work. And the second good example is recognition of refugees' qualifications. And this is a history of an example of cooperation also at European level. In 2015, I think we all remember, we had more than 1 million refugees coming to Europe. And we did the monitoring of the Lisbon Recognition Convention for the first time, and 70% of countries, they didn't have any legislation or tool to recognize refugee qualification, especially in the case of missing documentation. So people that have the skills, have the knowledge, they studied, but they didn't have their qualification, their paper, their educational documentation with them. So in 2 years, a lot has been done. There was an ad hoc recommendation in the framework of the Lisbon Recognition Convention supporting recognition of refugees' qualification. And there was in 2017, so very quick action. And then in 2019, the survey was launched again, a monitoring exercise only on Article 7, that is the article of the LRC referred to this, and more than 50% of countries in 2019 say they have tools and instruments. And I can say also from the Italian side, we created a network with the Italian Higher Education Institution, Ministry of University, and Economic Center and University to create a network of experts dealing with recognition of qualification of refugees, especially in the case of missing documentation, because in all the other cases, I mean, they are applicants. Maybe you should be more careful in verifying authenticity with the authority of the country from which they are escaping, but they are applicants. So I think this is a good example of recognition that work, even in cases that could be challenging, like the absence of documentation. And Norway also has a pivotal role in this.
Aloys, those examples Chiara just talked about, I think they're very interesting also in the German context, because I also think that the refugees coming in after 2015, as well as the refugees from Ukraine coming into the German academic system, changed something there. There was a lot of debate about how to deal with their situation, how to make it possible for them to get an academic education. Would you agree that those were 2 points where maybe the debate shifted a little bit?
Yes, we did a lot of things to make it possible for them to live and to work in Germany. And that started a discussion. But I have another example, for instance, our physics department. Their reason why they are generous in recognition is we have many disciplines of physics which are not available in Aachen, but which are available at our European partners. And we want to have a broader curriculum. That's the reason why the physics department decided, okay, we check the curricula of our partner universities, and we make it possible that a student can take a course at this university, and this is more or less automatically recognized. More or less automatically means the physics department has got one person who makes a recommendation about recognition. Formally, the committee decides, but as far as I know, the committee has never voted against the recommendation of this person, so the students can rely on what he is saying. And I think the debate has increased these developments in the German system.
Thank you so much. So before opening up to questions from the audience, I have one more question to all of you. Is there any need for more legislative action? Is there any more need for any kind of legal framework, either from the national level or from the European level, or you think, well, we have all of that, it's now only a question of culture, it's only about working with what is there, or are there any regulations that you think would be needed, would help out there? Grace.
It's a good question. In the Irish context, we don't need any more legal. We have everything in terms of the legislation.
So it's only a matter of culture now.
I think there's something in between, though, between the kind of high-level policy and the culture. There's something, like practical guidelines, generic guidelines that can be, adapted, applied in different contexts that we could do within in our Irish context that would help. I think oftentimes there's a big gap between the high-level policy and what happens on the ground. And we know that the confidence of staff and their own capacity and skills in this area is something that they're saying they need help with. So I think it's that in-between piece that we need to crack the practicalities of it, rather than any more legislation or things like that. I think we've got that down.
Well, it could still be that there is some little thing missing there, some link missing somewhere, legal one. Do you see any, Anna? Is everything there in place?
I think there is always a room for improvement, because education and the world is changing, and I think the recognition procedures also needs to be more in line with the latest developments, and especially what I've mentioned is non-formal education, which needs to be recognized, and also it's quite disputable topic, the micro-credentials at the European level. So for now it's still debatable on which levels are micro-credentials and how this can be recognized in higher education. So I think there is always a room for improvement. Georgia has also most of the stuff included in the legislation, including the recognition of refugees, prior learning, and also for such refugees who are missing the documentation, but then there is a case how these are introduced to the institutions. So first is if there are everything, and of course I think that there's still room for to put some more regarding the non-formal and other stuff in the legislation. And the second topic is how this needs to be spread to the institution and guide how this information needs to be taken to the institution or students or other stakeholders, because there are some cases when we have something in the legislation but the stakeholders don't know about that. So there are two different topics that we can discuss.
Who else wants to comment on that? Aloys, I know that universities never want more regulation.
Yes, I think for the universities, the regulations are more or less okay. But if it comes to consider degrees, for instance, there we have got a problem. The most difficult problem, for instance, teacher education in Germany. You need 2 subjects when you want to become a teacher. And if you come from other European countries, you usually only have 1 subject. That means you cannot work as a teacher in Germany, I think.
Which is going to change now, but
hopefully. We need more teachers, and we should have regulations which allow us to educate more teachers, even if they are not in the mainstream.
Thank you, Doug.
I think it's important that we don't create systems that don't work by itself, like you, or that you have the professional, the regulated professions and so on, that you should on the European level try to get them closer so that they become system of recognition and not system of not recognizing. Like was mentioned for the teachers, we have the same issue in Norway. But I also agree with that, at least for Norway, legal issues is not the main focus. Tools, practice, culture is the main focus. But on the other hand, these tools might also be interesting on the European level. How you convey documents, for example, trusted delivery of documents between institutions, things like that. There is a lot to go on in Europe on that case. and outside Europe, obviously.
So we may not need more regulation, but we have to admit that only because of a lot of regulation in the 90s and in the 2000 years on the European level, things have started to change. So obviously, the legal framework was important. The culture might lag behind a little bit, but legal frameworks make a difference, which is also interesting because, as I said, universities normally don't like that so much, but obviously, to some degree, that works. Chiara, would you like to add before I would open?
Yes, just to add that, I mean, the question on legal framework is always a little bit tricky because we know that in some countries everything should be regulated to work, and in other countries nothing should be regulated to work. But in general sense, I will share the feeling here that in Italy, I don't have the feeling that we need more legislation. The legislation is there, is in place. I think the point, and again, we come back to the same point, is very much on an affirmative culture of recognition. So looking to how we can recognize to what are the substantial agreements rather than the substantial differences we find in the other system. And maybe I can add that in this sense, training is fundamental. Since 4 years, we are doing a training course for admission officers and people working in the higher education institution on recognition, and we see a growing and growing level of interest. And I must say, let's say it's important that also the legislation is not, even the Italian one. So I think training is very important. So I would agree totally that we need more work on the cultural, from the cultural point of view.
You said growing level of interest from whom?
From university in terms of number. It's the 4th year that we do this
and
training.
they send more people?
Yes, this year we had the highest number of people, that is 66, is not, I mean, it's always recognition people. But for us, I mean, after the 4th year, we say, okay, do we need still to do this training? But it seems that there is still interest on this.
All right, thanks so much. So we have time for a number of questions, comments, and I really would like to get more perspectives from different places. There are so many universities and countries represented here, so please feel free to share your perspective and your point of view. I don't see everybody here, but obviously, yeah. Please, there's a microphone coming up, or would you like to, how should we do that? You can decide. Yeah, maybe you just come up to, oh, there's a microphone, okay, all right.
Thanks a lot. Francesco Locatelli from the TU Braunschweig. I heard about automatic recognition. I have some problems with this kind of terminus. So it's a little bit strong because in Germany it's necessary that the student apply for a recognition at the end for the horizontal mobility when he does some courses abroad. So it's very important that we don't speak about automatic recognition if we are speaking about the horizontal mobility and when they return back, because they have to request the recognition in any case.
How would you phrase it? What they meant is that once you apply for it, then you get an automatic recognition.
And if he decide or she decide that they would not like to recognize the course because,
okay.
And this is what meaning what the student should be the center of the universe in this case, on my opinion. Mm-hmm. So please let the student be so we start with the Lisbon Convention with the meaning about changing learning outcomes, then we have to do it fully, and if the student would like to request the recognition at the end, he has to have the opportunity, but it's not a kind of constriction.
All right, thank you. Let's take that point back to the panel. Anna, would you agree that students may decide that they don't want to get something recognized?
Actually, maybe I will rephrase what I meant under automatic recognition, because automatic recognition for us is that between EHA country, the credits, ECTS or qualification needs to be automatically recognized. I don't see the case when students maybe don't want to apply for recognition. This is just to move freely between job markets. So if the student gets qualification in Georgia, for example, then employer in Germany should hire this person without any question. So this is the automatic recognition. And I can talk about the university alliances, which is one of the key topic as well among the Europe. So these alliances was created for these purposes, that between these alliances student can move freely, and he or she gets the qualification, and this is recognized between these universities without any recognition. So this is what we mean under automatic recognition. Maybe my colleagues want to
Aloys?
It is clear in the German system that a student has to apply for recognition. But what's automatic recognition is the student is not forced to go to any of the professors who is responsible for the module.
But it's automatic.
But there's a decision, there's a list in the web which says if you pass this module at that university, it will be recognized, and we cannot refuse to recognize it.
Yes, that's the point. So it's not, maybe a student don't want or don't need this, but it's automatically recognized. The students don't need to apply in anywhere to recognize, but it's automatically recognized. But if she wants this or need this is another point, but it's already recognized. This is the automatic recognition.
All right, let's take in the next question.
Susanne Gittel-Aviung-Paar from the University of Bonn. I would like to come back to this point of automatic recognition, because I've got the feeling there are different definitions about that. Because the definition I know in the context of Erasmus, for example, is that automatic recognition is just that you get recognized a module or course without having any other exams, and not that there is a database where I can see, okay, this module was recognized and now it will be recognized for me as well. We don't have that, and most universities don't have that. So there is some confusion, I think, about this term automatic recognition, because automatic, it sounds like I go and I get recognized without having to do anything, which is not the case. So we should more define that in the case, I'm talking about mobility, student mobility for a semester or a year, so credit mobility. So maybe somebody can more say what is really automatic recognition, and what does it mean, for example, in the Erasmus context, where we are forced to have automatic recognition and we don't even know really what it means.
Doug, you came up with the term, I think.
I would like to say that automatic recognition means different things to different people, and not at least in different countries. So I can't say for sure for the Erasmus system, but I can say that, for example, for us, when we recognize for the professional market, recognize master's degrees, PhDs, and so on, when you have automatic recognition, it means that you can choose for having it as an individual decision made by the bureaucracy, which can be, you can have complaints about it, you can have it kind of restated. That's one way. But you can also have a statement that's pre-prepared that say, if you are this person and you have this degree from this institution, well, then this is a master's degree on the level of a master's degree in Norway. And that for us is automatic recognition. So you can kind of choose an easier path. I see that that's not exactly what she meant. I'm just illustrating that it means different things in different settings.
The answer within the framework of our panel could be, again, it's a matter of culture, you know, it's a matter of perspective, that in any situation we're in, you always look for taking out the influence of individuals like professors, that you try to take that influence back. That would be maybe my idea of how to define that. And still, the context will be different, but the difference is that you take out the individual decision as much as possible. That might be the thing where it comes together. Are there more questions? I don't see you here because of this thing here, but yeah, obviously, yeah, exactly. Always behind that.
Yes, hello, my name is Dominik Kubon. I'm a member of the German Accreditation Pool, so a student union kind of equivalent in regards to quality assurance. My question would be, because we are speaking a lot about the formal regulations are in place and examination boards in Germany decide when a recognition is made or not made. So my question would be, how can we reach out to these persons that will decide something? Because we are here in the central level, we are all experts or kind of experts on recognition, but the people at the universities who are really deciding those things. I think Chiara said that you have trainings at your institution, so this would be a really good way, but you need staff, you need time, you need people that can educate the other people. And I don't know if those professors we are talking about an examinations board that have no idea how to do recognition would likely to attend this. So can we force this? What is your idea of the best approach on this? Because I think the system that the student representative is fighting against another stakeholders is not a very good example. And so what is your opinion on making the procedures more transparent and working with all the people together to achieve this?
So how to reach out? Chiara, would you like to start?
Yes, maybe I can give a part of the answer, then I will leave to the professor to answer for the academic stuff. I will not be so arrogant to take the role of professor. I mean, from how now I'm joking, of course, but just from my perspective. So let's say, first of all, I see, and I think also this conference is expression of this recognition is high in the agenda. We say this in several times. More and more higher education system, higher education institution, ministries, etc., but also international organizations see internationalization and student mobility as key. For the reason we say it, but I also would like to say that this is the same from the Middle Age, because we had international students also in the Middle Age. I mean, internationalization was at the core of the birth of universities, with the students grouping in nations, etc. And troubles that were already there. So if we look to the life of students in the Middle Age. Now moving to this, what I can say, what we see key in an effective recognition procedure in higher education institution is exactly cooperation between the academic staff and the administrative staff, and also the management. I make you a concrete example. We didn't speak about workload. But we know that many higher education institutions, many universities, they maybe assess 1,000 applications to enroll 30 students. So there is a huge amount of work that is not recognized sometimes, no? So I think here let's say the internationalization strategy of the institution can do a lot to target exactly the student you want, for instance, to reduce also the workload. And I would say that academic staff is more and more sensitive to this, because at the end of the day, we all want quality students and successful students, because, I mean, the qualification at the end of the day is a certified proof of competencies. So I want the students that have the competencies to succeed in my course. So I think this is a common interest. And in this sense, I will see that this should be an engagement of the overall academic community, but as I said, I mean, the university cannot be alone. We need the circle of recognition working with ministry, with the national authorities, conference of university rectors can do a lot, students, I mean, stakeholder organization, etc. So this will be my answer. And regarding the workload, also to train is a lot, but again, it's a matter of will, no? Because if there is an interest, then also the resources can, I think, can come.
Mm-hmm. Who else wants to comment? Grace.
Yeah, it's a great question, and we've been doing a lot of that in the Irish project. I guess because it is a project, it's approached like a project, but I think there's something to say that it's not a kind of a piecemeal thing, it's not an ad hoc thing. It has to be, it's a strategic piece of work for an institution to do something like that, and there's a piece about aligning the culture and the strategy so that they all come together. There's also, I think, a lot of opportunity for cooperation between institutions. So in Ireland, we are running a thing at the moment called the RPL Digital Badge, and that's been run centrally through my project, but it's available to any staff members in any institutions, either in higher education or further education, and they can participate in it. So I think if we can think collectively about some of these common issues that we all have, we can reduce duplication of effort, and maximise our economies of scale to kind of to do things effectively.
Aloys?
I think the experts are working in the international office, and the decisions are made by the faculties globally. And we have one initiative which is called MATCH. That means that the experts from the international office support the faculties in making decisions. And then we have to transport good practices. I have the worst practice, for instance. One faculty checks the recognition of the same module of the same university every year. The reason is this could have changed. Okay, this could have changed, but we do not, it's a matter of justice. But if we have a module which is taught by different lecturers, they are also not always the same. There are always differences, and we have to accept a certain amount of difference. And this is a piece of culture which can be transported into the faculties. And we have to make sure that everybody in the university knows the best practices of it. And this is also some kind of competition. Competition works at technical universities because nobody wants to be the worst.
Thank you. Now I have a question to all of you again, and it will be on Slido one more time. It also is some kind of a pre-conclusion of our discussion. Which field of action has the biggest impact on shaping a recognition culture in your point of view? So Slido question is, which field of action has the biggest impact on shaping a recognition culture? Maybe after our discussion we should also add a number of new answer alternatives, but just choose other if you don't find your answer in there. And we'll give it a second. Oh, you're also doing the Slido. Yeah, of course. That's good. So again, on top we see how many people have already answered, and we wait until we are up to about 80. And obviously you are fast this time. Give it another 20 seconds or so. If you haven't yet decided, please do so. I won't continue before there are more than 80 people up there. But I think we are getting there. You're done already? Yeah, you're done. So 4 more to go. All right. Okay. So it's a pretty clear result, I would say. Most people say implementing flexible study programs. And the second thing we talked about in the context of European alliances, for example, cooperation of higher educational institutions and different educational sectors. And the remaining answers are comparatively rare. Networking stakeholders, designing procedures, quality development is not high on the list at all. And facilitating staff mobility, that's kind of surprising. I would have expected that more people would say that, because then they learn about it. You know, if they move around, they learn about how things are done elsewhere. But obviously this is not the case. Flexible study programs, which, and now I'm looking back into my panel for a final round here, which is the obvious answer, but also is the hardest one, right? I mean, to say that you want to implement flexible study programs, if cultural change is all about, that's all about the cultural change, just to go to universities and tell them, well, implement flexible study programs, then the problem is solved. Aloys, sounds very easy.
Yes, but I think it's necessary. So usually if the program is very detailed, then the module at a different university does not fit exactly. Sometimes only half of the module fits. And this is much easier if you have flexible study programs. Then usually the departments are very generous.
So why don't we do them? Why don't we have them everywhere?
We are working on it, yes.
Yeah, but really, give an answer to that.
Yes,
Is it again culture? Is it culture?
It is a certain kind of culture. We transformed the diploma study courses to the bachelor and master system, and depending on the faculty, for
But
instance,
this is like 25 years ago.
yes, but depending on the faculty, it is very different. In mathematics, it's no problem at all. You do not have any kind of regulations. But in engineering departments, this was a kind of tradition. As I said, it was very detailed, and we do not want to give it up.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to work on it. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. I would prefer we would be much faster, but...
Well, you know, we wait another 100 years and then we're there. Chiara, your comment on that is, again, it sounds like the obvious answer, flexible study programs, but it has been the obvious answer 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised a little bit, I must say, and probably my point will be in the line of what Grace just said. I would have say more cooperation or networking or quality, maybe, quality procedure. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little, let's say, but I will follow what has been said to see the positive side, let's say, and to, let's say, see this as a way to further, I would say, make flexible our higher education, also to include, to be more inclusive, also of lifelong learners, because this is still probably something that we can work on more.
Mm-hmm. Grace, what's your take on that?
I would agree with Chiara as well. I would have, if I don't have my phone, but if I did, I would have said the quality development, because what I see in Ireland is the institutions who've gone furthest with quality development and RPL have gone furthest. You know, put it in their academic regulations, it's in their marks and standards documents, you know, it's really, really embedded there. And I think that's somewhere for my project to focus on, but yeah, I think that's key.
Mm-hmm. Doug, what did you vote for?
I voted for the cooperation of higher education institutions and different educational sectors. Mm-hmm. I was also a bit surprised, but I agree with what has been said here so far, I think.
And why did you vote for the cooperation?
It could have been several different things, but to my experience is that cooperation across is a good way to kind of engage a culture in a sense that once you get to know and learn from each other, that works in a culture building way.
Mm-hmm. And Anna, what did you vote for?
I voted for quality development, yes, and I agree with my colleagues. I also would love to have a flexible study programs, but in our reality, it's a bit hard because we have a lot of regulations, national qualification framework, predefined learning outcomes, and so on. And even I would love to have more flexible curriculum and like that. For now, for Georgian reality, it's a bit hard to have more flexibility in the programs.
Mm-hmm. So one last question to you, Anna. What makes you maybe optimistic that we are really getting there now, that we are really moving ahead, that maybe in a couple of years you don't have to sit on a panel anymore and to ask for a different recognition culture because it's already there? What makes you optimistic? Let's not talk about the pessimistic part, only the optimistic part.
Yeah, of course, because the progress is on pace, so we can see the progress from the past years, and the procedures are developing and they are more friendly and so on. Even we need more work, and there are still challenges with the progress to compare the previous years. And these areas of improvements is because of developments and changing world, not because that some of the countries are not implementing something. Yes, maybe there are still challenges, but this is because of the changing world, and I love to say that there is always a room for improvement, so it's just the case to find the better solutions. Mm-hmm. And this what I can say, that's why I'm optimistic, just to make things better, and this is always the case.
What makes you optimistic, Aloys?
The market is changing. In 2030, we will compete for students. At the moment, we are waiting which students applies at our university. And in the future, we will make much more offers for students. That means we have to show them why our university is that good as we claim. and the recognition procedures and the international cooperation are points at this competition.
Chiara?
University have more than 1,000 years of history, so I think they are able to find their own way
at their own speed.
Yes, at their own speed, but yes.
Okay. But what makes you optimistic that the speed will be okay, Chiara?
So I tend to see the glass half full, and I see the progress made now beyond the joke. I mean, in 20 years of Bologna process, we build a system of supporting mobility. We have full awareness that recognition is a condition for effective mobility. And we see a lot of cooperation going on. And we see, let's say, both among institutions at the different level, national, international, but also among peers, no? Among academic staff, administrative staff, etc. So I see a lot of progress. I mean, we always mark what is missing, but we should also acknowledge that our predecessor did a great work, I would say, in reaching many of the objectives they had, especially, for instance, at the beginning of the Bologna process or at the signature of the Lisbon Recognition Convention.
Thank you. Doug, what makes you optimistic?
Optimistic by nature, basically. But I think we
as Norwegians are always.
But we are moving forward. Things do get better, and I think what we have mentioned several times here, that internal drivers in the institutions are important, not only external pressure. So I think that when we're seeing this, so actually that the number of students going down might have a positive effect on this. I'm pretty sure it will.
It's nice that we keep celebrating the student numbers going down, because they make universities more dynamic. Grace, what makes you optimistic?
Yeah, very similar maybe to some of the comments. I think maybe institutions will act in enlightened self-interest in, you know, when it comes to the pace and, you know, of change, the scale of change that's happening right now and that's coming at them. They will have to. There isn't going to be, I think, a get-out clause, and that makes me feel optimistic. A little bit like Dag, I'm also an optimist, but there's so much actually great stuff that's happening on the ground that we see, and more of it, I think, will come because of circumstances.
So the recognition culture in higher education will change because universities will have to change, and this makes us optimistic. Thank you so much for our panel, to our panel. Thank you so much. A warm applause to all of you.